and what that really means. And so I'm gonna help you maybe bridge that gap a little bit today in terms of understanding. When we talk about traditionally the idea of a brand, we're really talking about the verbal, visual, and emotional components of a corporate entity, okay? In your case, your small business. So much of that in small business, of course, is wrapped up in the individual, the persona, you, the business owner, and then there's the small business. And the better and more you can create the brand as the individual corporate entity, for most businesses, there are some that, like if you're a realtor or if, in other smaller enterprises, that may not always be the case. But for the most part, the brand being its own independent person, sort of like a child, at some point your child becomes their own persona and individual, and there's that part in their teenage years where they start to rebel, and that's a mechanism for them to become sort of their own person and start to stand on their own personality traits, skills, and so forth. Well, that sort of is how your company's brand develops as well. So we talk about branding in sort of that construct, the visual, verbal, and emotional branding of the company. And then we get to the idea of the web presence. And so what is small business web presence? So in Solomo Success, the book that Tracy was talking about at the top of the webinar, I define your web presence as basically everything that you, your business, and your staff do. And that's regarding your web or product or service, right? Your website, product, or service, and your brand messaging, right? But it's everything you do on the World Wide Web and beyond. So that would include anything you would do if you were to launch a mobile website, or if your website is responsive, how that looks to Google and the other search engines on the mobile web. It's how your website looks when people visit from the desktop browser. It's how people experience it when they're seeing social media content, either posted to your blog or posted to other social media like Facebook or Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Instagram, Snapchat, and so forth. And it's the way in which people touch base with any other social technology, whether that's a Wikipedia, the Wikipedia article about your company, how you represent yourself in all of those capacities. So I want to talk about how web presence really operates from that fundamental perspective. How are you putting out touch points? How are you getting yourself in front of people? And how do you look when that happens, okay? And so I'm going to talk about each of the fundamental pieces, the critical components that we're really going to go into today. And so I want to give deference and time to that, but that's really what we're talking about, okay? Every time you do something on the internet, you're leaving a fingerprint, a little digital, touch point that people are going to see. And what is the visual associated with that? Is that supporting your brand, okay, what we call being on message or on brand? Is the verbal or the written content, the audio or written content, matching your brand in terms of tone and style? And the emotional experience of the individual, are they having the right emotional experience? That is, if you are an awe-inspiring brand, do they feel that sense of awe? If you're a joyful or inspirational brand, are they feeling that sense of inspiration when they come across your content? If you're a really serious brand, like if you're in the legal industry or accounting or something else like that, and you want to keep that somewhat and highly professional tone and it's very serious oriented, do people feel that experience when they come into contact with your web presence? If they don't, then you're off message, you're off brand, and therefore you're not putting forward the right web presence. And so every time one of those things goes out on behalf of your company, you need to really be thinking about that, okay? And we'll talk about that a little more as we make our way forward. So that's what web presence is. If you have any questions, feel free to jump in and I'll be happy to answer those. But that's really the core. Okay, so next up is really the critical components of web presence, and I'm going to go through these in as much detail as I can in the time that we have, but I'm going to try and sort of cover each of these pieces so that you have an understanding of the various ways in which your audience, whether it's a website visitor or someone who's a fan on your Facebook page or otherwise, is really coming into contact and experiencing your brand, okay? So these are the critical components. It is not exhaustive. It's not everything, okay? So there are going to be other ways in which people can interact and engage with your brand through the web. I won't be able to cover them all, but we'll try and do as best as we can, okay? All right, so critical components. Let's just start off with the website and blog, okay? And I really consider them, really the fundamentals, okay? So when we talk about, being on the web and creating a web presence, we want a website that represents your company well. And that really means you have to have the appropriate pieces of your brand in place before you can even get to your web presence, right? So in order to launch a website, you're going to need to make sure you have your logo icon, logo text decided upon. You're going to have to make sure that you have your typeface or your fonts decided upon for your brand. What's your color palette? Okay, usually 2 to 5 colors that you're going to use across your entire scope of your brand. That's going to happen all before you launch your website. And for a lot of people, if you're trying to get back on brand and to reestablish your web presence, it means going back to those core roots, okay? So you have your website. For those of you who don't know what a website is, because that just happens. If you don't know what a website is, it's basically a series of documents that you publish to the web underneath your own domain, your own website address, okay? And so it's sort of like yourbusinessname.com, and you publish these pages together, and they represent your business. For most businesses, this is a kind of a brochure or even a business card. It has so little information about you in the business. And really, in order to create a good web presence, it's like a digital identity for you as an individual. For the business, you have to give people more information than you think you do. And so that website really needs to represent all the various aspects of you. And that doesn't mean you have to put it all on one page. You need to put it on many different pages and organize it well so that someone can navigate that page, understand what it's all about, and that really starts to develop the persona. So for example, I'm a runner, okay? That's not really something that you know about me when you see me, unless you say, well, that's a tall, lanky guy. He must be a runner. Maybe you see me running, from my home and doing a run in the morning. You're like, oh, look, that's Ray Sidney-Smith. He owns W3 Consulting, and he also happens to be a runner. But without those, sort of taking context clues, you wouldn't know that I'm a runner without me having maybe a page on my website that talked about my running interest. And you wouldn't also know that I'm an avid tech geek if I was out running and you didn't notice maybe my smartwatch and my headphones, my Bluetooth headphones, and my other gadget and gears and so forth put on me. But if you just heard my name, you'd need more than that, right? That's the same thing with your business. Your business probably has different services, it has different resources available to it, it has different aspects, your staff, all of that stuff makes up your web presence, and you need to put that on your website. So what are the core pages that you need? I usually talk about sort of the big 5 pages, sometimes 6, and I'll explain. But you have a home page, and we're talking a minimum of 200 words for those pages to be indexed. And your home page, that's going to be a part of your web presence because it's going to be one of the most widely visited web pages on your website. And that's not because of Google, but because you're going to market your web page, your website to people, and when people go to the main URL, they go to www.yourbusinessname.com, well, they're going to show up on your homepage, okay? So your homepage is really for people that you meet offline or that you know and are referring to the website directly, okay? For everybody else, they show up through Google searches that take them to pages that are not the homepage, okay? So it's really important for you to recognize the homepage is really for people you know and people who have been referred to you by people you know. And so we have the home page. We then have an about page. There might be an about the founder, especially if the business is very connected to your persona. And then we have maybe a service page with multiple services underneath it, which each have their own independent page. We then will sometimes have a testimonials page, or from our clients, sort of a message that tells people the level of service, the kind of service, and the quality of the product or service. And we'll have a contact page. And then we might have an additional page, which is a location page, okay, or locations if you have multiple locations for your business. So that's the website, right? Now that's traditionally what we call a brochure website, okay? It's like leafing through a little trifold brochure about you, and that's really all the information we learn. Good web presence is then deciding, okay, I've got a website, and as the business owner, and as a consumer, a target audience, would I want to go to this website every day? I mean, when's the last time you, as a business owner, have been to your own website, okay, to actually peruse the content, to make sure it's up and running, to update the content, okay? For most business owners, it's very rare for you to actually browse your own website. But if you use the standard that you would want to go visit your website every day if you were your consumer, if you were your target audience, then you're doing something right. Okay? So that's the standard we want to create in terms of web presence. And then there's the blog. Okay? Now, a blog is actually social media. We'll get there. But in essence, the blog lives on the website, hopefully. And when that happens, we really need to make sure we create content on the blog that is, again, within the consistency and tone of your company. So do you have a content strategy in place that says that you want to be able to put out content for the blog that is, interesting, in terms of, an entertaining sort of tone to it? Is it informative, or is it something that should be persuading people to buy from you? That is, product demos and otherwise. You have to figure out what category and potentially categories that your blog will cover in terms of content, and then you need to put it out there. But the branding comes into place in terms of how you present it, okay? And again, that's visual. How is it going to be laid out? Is it that your blog is always going to start with, primary sort of chart that covers sort of the scope of things that you're going to cover in the blog post? Are you going to start with a summary? Are you going to write a long-form post or a short-form post? Okay, if your blog is for, young adults, you're going to have shorter posts than if your blog posts are for older adults, mature adults. Okay, so knowing your audience dictates the length of the blog post, it dictates the format, and it dictates the style and tone of the article, of the articles that you're writing. Okay, so all of those things come into play, as well as the type of content. So you might do all video posts for your blog for one particular audience. Well, then you need to keep that consistent. Or you're maybe going to write, you're going to do a podcast, so your blog is actually going to become a podcast, and you're going to do audio content. Okay, well, you've got to figure out all those things, and you need to be in line with the overarching mission of the company, but also the visual, verbal, and emotional components, as I keep talking about, of the company as well. Okay, so website and blog. Next up is email. Very often overlooked component of web presence. When you are communicating via email with someone, even if you're using, and you should be using, email marketing software for that, for compliance purposes, CAN-SPAM Act and other regulations, you are communicating with many people over the internet, okay? And so you're sending data from, your marketing software to many individuals, but this is actually a one-to-one communication platform. It's, if you've heard me talk about podcasting, it's sort of podcasting light in the sense that you're communicating with one individual, you have their full attention on this particular, in this particular medium, and you're talking directly to them. And so many times your web presence gets undermined because you act as though you're writing to many people, okay? And in reality, email should be one of the most personal styles and tones that you write to. So yes, your email is going to many people, but you should be writing directly to that person. So your email marketing software has the ability for you to say, "Dear Raymond," or "Dear Ray," as most people call me, "Dear Ray," such and such. And so write the email in such a way that you are being consistent and personable and personal to your audience. Okay, so email is really important. Email goes into an individual's inbox. It's not like, most people don't share email inboxes, right? It goes to that one individual. So why wouldn't you speak to that one individual one-to-one? So again, good web presence means making sure that you know how to communicate with the technology that you're using, okay? And when it comes to email, making sure that the email header looks like the rest of your brand. So if it's going to, have a header, it's going to, of course, hopefully have the logo for your company. The header should have the same colors. The email newsletter should probably have its own name, almost like its own publication, right? It is its own publication, just like your blog will have its own name. Your email should have its own, email newsletter should have its own name. And that doesn't mean you need to send an email newsletter out every week. Most people think of blogging and email newsletters. You have to send out one every week or every month, that kind of thing. You can have an email newsletter that goes around less often. It really depends on how much traffic does that email drive in order to support your business. So you really need to track that. But you're going to make sure that the email, again, the tone of the email is going to, and style of the email is going to be consistent, and making sure that the software is doing what you need it to do so that it replicates your brand across different arenas. So for example, if you're sending an email with HTML, and it's translating that for, sort of putting, visual content in front of people. Well, that's very different than the content that will be provided if I have a text-only email reader. Okay, so if I read all of my email in text only, and your email newsletter is all visual content, well, how is that going to be interpreted? Your email marketing software needs to be able to balance that duality, to deal with that, if that's something that your audience has to deal with. So knowing your audience is important, right? Coming back to that, but also making sure that your email newsletter software can do both of those if that's necessary. Okay, so just keep that in mind as you move along. Email should have an intro, usually an update regarding new and interesting things that are happening in the company. The center or the base of the newsletter should have content. That could be repurposing either blog or other social media content, things that you're posting on different social networking services. It could have other content that you're creating, obviously, different formats, whether that be audio, video, and otherwise, and linking to them. And your email should then end with a call to action. And the call to action can be any number of things. It can be, come check out this really interesting new thing that we have on our website that might be of interest or value to you. It could be a new sale. You have some kind of discount offer for people who are interested in engaging with your product or service and your business right now. It could be we're doing a charity drive, and maybe a winter coat drive for a local charity. Come drop off a coat or socks or gloves or hat for someone in need. Okay? What we want to see with your business is that people are interacting and engaging with your newsletter, and they want to continue to receive it because it has value. And when they receive it because it has value, that your web presence is doing its job of making them do what you ask them to do. So how often do they do the things that you ask them to do when you ask them to do it? And that becomes what we call an influence metric. How much influence do you have over the people who are reading your emails? So, for example, if you ask, your email list maybe has a couple hundred people on it, and you ask them to deliver coats, and you get 45 people from the 200 or 300 email addresses that you have to show up with coats, hats, scarves, and gloves for people, well, that's fantastic. That's a great influence metric. Okay, not only is it doing something good for the community, but it's about you knowing how influential you are to the company, with your company. Now, if you have something that says then, okay, well, buy from us now a couple weeks later, and you get more people purchasing from you after doing this sort of altruistic call to action. Now, that's really actionable data, right? Because you know that after you do something, warm and fuzzy for people, then they are more likely to buy from you. Well, then you can use that data to always pair, or not always, but sometimes pair your email newsletters, concurrently with something like that, something community-focused, then a call to action that sales. So you just sort of use the data to be able to make good decisions, okay?
Actually,
next up, we have social media.
Before you move on, what's the difference between an email newsletter and a blog? Are they giving out the same content in each, or would they be different?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So a blog is think of it as sort of like an online magazine, okay? And so the blog content is stuff that you want Google and the other search engines to be able to find and to direct web traffic to, okay? Email is something that is more personal. You're writing it from yourself to another person, and that happens in this email marketing set scenario. You're writing to many people, but many people individually. The software is just automating that process. So the email newsletter needs to be different in the sense that you're not just taking your blog post and pasting it in there. You may link to your blog post, hey, right away, we wrote these 2 or 3 blog posts since we last, emailed you. That would be fine. But the blog post just pasted into an email is not the email newsletter. The email newsletter is those 3 components, right? It has to have some kind of introduction. Hey, last year we added these. Last week we added these 3 new products to our inventory. Here are links to them. You should check them out. Second section. Hey, we posted these 3 blog posts to our blog. If any of these are interest to you, go check them out. Call to action, right? We have this new sale going on, 20% off all things in this service line or in this product line. If you're interested in those, go click on them and be taken to our online catalog or our services page that talk about that product. So the email itself is is shorter for most people, and it's linking out primarily to your website and or blog and or something else in order to take people to that actionable content. Okay, so email is about action. The blog is about warming people up to your brand through information, you know, the educational component, entertainment, or some kind of persuasive content. All right, so then social media ends up being a new sort of category, right? So the social web is really all about the idea that content is not something that you create and then forget about, okay? So your blog is actually social media. It is a social technology. And so social media is, instead of a one-to-many communication, for example, your email marketing software, it sends an email, it automates the process of your one email, and then it sends individual emails to each of those people that are on your marketing list. That's one-to-many. That's what we consider traditional media, even though it's online. It's traditional marketing, right? Social media campaigns are a co-creation of content, meaning that it's somewhat like democratic writing. If anyone knows the work of Dr. Danielle Allen, who wrote the book about the writing of the Declaration of Independence, the idea here is that many people are writing together, are co-creating the content that is social media, okay? So social media is the idea that it's many-to-many, and you as the business owner are attempting to control your web presence by creating content that people should culminate around, should group around, right? It's sort of like the town crier or somebody who's sitting on a street corner and they're ringing a bell and selling a product, okay? And most of the content of what that person's doing when they're on the street corner, you know, selling their product is educating people about maybe the product, maybe educating people about the problem, educating people about other solutions, and people are learning and they're being entertained and they're therefore being persuaded to either buy your product, which is the ultimate goal, but they may also just need more information. And that means if I don't need your product, but I know somebody who does, I'm going to be best capable now of selling that to that person, so that person then goes ahead and buys your product. So social media is about getting people engaged around topics of discussion that are close to or on the topic of your product or service. And so social technologies are the software that we use in order to be able to do that. Now web presence, good web presence, means that we've chosen the right technologies. So for example, most businesses will not necessarily need a wiki, okay? A wiki is an open document format. It's basically a content management system that allows anyone to log in and to be able to edit this document, okay? So think of it as sort of like a manual where everyone can log in and sort of add portions of the manual on which they are a specialist. That they have this, you know, Wikipedia, the online, you know, encyclopedia, is the most well-known version of a wiki. And people log in, you know, you can do this right now. You can create a username and password, log into Wikipedia, and create an entry, okay? And or log in and edit someone else's entry with new constructive information. Well, most businesses don't need a wiki, you know, but maybe you decide that, you know, that's something that would be useful to your business, then you can launch that. That's a social technology, and that's a kind of social media. Each of those pages or, you know, articles within the wiki are that. Your blog post is the idea that you want to incite conversation. Your blog post should not be a statement, right, and end with nothing. It should be a way to invite people to add to the conversation. So you might be starting the conversation, but you never end the conversation on a blog. You want to open the conversation. So that's the idea behind good social media web presence or good social presence, is the idea of starting and engaging conversations. Every blog post, every Twitter post, you know, every Instagram photo or video or Snap or whatever it is platform you're using, the main goal is basically to listen to people, to engage with other content, to speak to people, that is getting them to engage with the content you're creating and connecting those people, giving them a sense of belonging, making them feel like they belong in the in-group, because the more they feel like they're closer to your brand and the other people that are close to the brand, the more likely they are to buy from you when they have a desire, a need, or want, okay? Next up, we have the mobile web. And the mobile web encompasses not just your website that gets displayed on mobile devices. That could be a cell phone with a feature browser. It could be a smartphone with a full-fledged mobile browser. It can also be a mobile application and a mobile web application. That is an application that you open up in a web browser and operates and does functions in the mobile web browser versus going to a mobile app store like on the iPhone, that's the Apple App Store, on Google's platform, that's the Google Play Store, and you log into those and you install new software in order to be able to use the functions within it. A lot of small businesses miss the boat on this because the mobile application environment sometimes is just basically their website skinned as a mobile app, and it doesn't really have any main functionality. So good web presence, okay, is the idea of how can we put messages out to people that not only are functional, okay? So if you're going to think about the mobile web, one is that you need to make sure that when someone looks at your phone, looks at their phone and goes to your website, that they can read it, okay? And that, again, just not to beat a dead horse, but this is really important, you need to make sure it looks the same when they visit your website, that they get the same visual, verbal, and emotional experience when they're on the mobile device. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be all the same content, right? You might have less content on your mobile website than on your main website if you have multiple websites. If you have a responsive website that just basically shrinks to the size of the phone's screen, that's fine also. It can have longer content, but know that those first 5 to 10 sentences are really what anyone's going to read, and then they're going to probably browse around the website to wherever they need to go, which means that if you're developing for the mobile web with your regular website and a responsive website, your text, your primary text on your home page and basically the first 200 words of any web page on your website needs to be linkable to the rest of your website, not just the navigation bar, but placing hyperlinks within the text of where people are reading. Because if I'm on a mobile phone, I'm reading your website, and I get 2 or 3 finger swipes down, and I'm reading this content, and it says, oh, by the way, we provide these services, or we have this product, and it doesn't click to the product, well, guess what I do? I keep reading, and I'm no longer closer to buying, I'm further away from it. So we need to make sure that the mobile website, the responsive traditional website that's responsive and brings me down to the mobile screen size, now allows me to be able to not have to scroll all the way back to the navigation at the top, which may also be not visually present because the mobile responsive sites usually make them go away into a little icon. Now it's out of sight, out of mind. I don't see products. I don't see services. I don't see testimonials as an option to look on your website. So the text of your website needs to be hyperlinked to be able to take me there. Good web presence means you've got those links in those first 200 words so that people can click on and go to where they need to go to. I see a product in your text, it should be linked to that product so I can click on it and immediately be taken there. Okay? If you're talking about mobile web application, mobile application development, basically a smartphone app, those are a much bigger topic, and I'm not going to be able to get into too much of it, but the primary purpose of that is kind of the same thing with why you would have a website. What's going to make someone want to have that app on their phone and keep it on their phone, okay, versus using it, realizing that they don't really need it, and deleting it forever, okay? Same thing with your website. What's going to make me want to come back to your website on a regular basis, right? So flip that. I mean, same thing with the website. You want a website that you come back to. With a mobile app, you want that same feeling. You want someone who's going to feel like the function of the website is to such an extent that I'm going to want to regularly visit it. I want to regularly use this. What functions, what value can you provide in the mobile application? For some people, that could be content. It really could be. If you work in some kind of industry, like maybe you're an accountant and you want to provide regular updates regarding payroll tax changes or notifying your clients about when they should do payroll. Maybe a mobile application would be really useful to them, where you push notifications to the business owner that tells them that they need to do their payroll this morning. That would be a great, interesting function and something that you could potentially do. And but if it's just content that I can get on your website without installing the app, and I don't need to be notified about it because it's not pertinent to me in a timely fashion, then it's probably not going to be as great in a mobile app, right? So think about the timeliness, the location associated with it, and the functions you can add. You can get push notifications on a mobile phone, so you can push timely information to your clients through a mobile application. You can engage, enter content, enter data, call mobile phones, generate an email, all of those kinds of things from a mobile application. Anyway, I'm not going to get too farther into it because it's a much bigger topic, but that's the mobile web. Okay, then we have mobile apps. I've already talked about that. And then finally, the last category of web presence is advertising, making sure that your advertising, your ad spend, as we call it, the advertising budget that you're going to spend is aligned with the needs of your company, okay? And this happens infrequently that a business actually has their budget in mind when they create a marketing plan, if they even create a marketing plan. So it's really important for you to decide out the gate how all of these things are connected. So if you don't have your website and blog, your email marketing, and your social media set up, and then you try to advertise and you don't have very much success with it, there's a reason for that, okay? Because your web presence hasn't been, the foundation hasn't been set. So you really need to get the website and blog up and running. Even if you don't have hundreds and hundreds of blog posts, fine. If you have a couple blog posts on your blog and you're starting from there, that's perfectly fine. Then at least someone who's getting an advertising piece, whether that be an online ad through Google AdWords, if someone sees a social media ad on Facebook, or if they see a mobile ad that shows up inside of an app or on a mobile website, and they click on it and they come to your website, they're actually going to see real content. They're going to see you. They're going to see your company. They're going to see what they need to see to learn as much about your company to want to buy from you. But if you send advertising pieces out and they don't have the fundamental pieces that take care of those jobs of letting people get to know you and your business, then the advertising, it's throwing money, into the wind. It's not really useful. So make sure that you have the underpinnings of at least the website and blog to look, not necessarily professional, but basically like your business, so that people have the understanding that when they come to it, they're going to get the experience they expect, okay? So match those expectations. Not much more about that in terms of web presence than making sure the ads are visually helpful to the person and that the text obviously calls people to do something. Again, call to action. Make sure that the advertisement is telling someone to do something. If it doesn't, then why put up an ad, okay? For large companies like Coca-Cola and Ferrari and these other ones, they could put out an ad of a fancy car, sitting there with a beautiful moon behind them, and people can gush and awe over it, and that will do really well for them. That'll be good brand recognition. Okay, for most small businesses, that is a waste of time and money. Okay, it doesn't do anything for you. If it's not making a sale, it's wasting your money. So those ads need to have calls to action. Okay, they need to tell people what to do in clear, plain, succinct language. Okay. Okay, so now that we've talked about that, let's talk about some of the critical components beyond the sort of infrastructure pieces of web presence. So now we come across with what you need to create in order to be able to make your web presence come alive. First, we start off with a brand-enabled business name. And for you, that means not being, ABC Company, okay? ABC Company, what does ABC Company do? Unless you're an alphabet letter company, I don't know what you do. And so many businesses I see there, they're XYZ Consulting, okay? And I'm not going to make fun of myself here because I'm W3 Consulting, but I guess I just did. But the point is that if you didn't know that W3 stood for World Wide Web and that we're a web consultancy, you would be lost without the tagline, right? And so that's why we create taglines and that's why we have them. Sometimes the name doesn't necessarily communicate everything, right? So if someone said, what does Amazon do? If you didn't know Amazon, you really wouldn't know. Are they a river company, a river cruise touring company? I don't know. But then, if you have a brand that size, people then start to know what Amazon is. They're an online retailer. They're the largest online retailer. Great. But for W3 Consulting, we need a tagline. We need those 5 to 8 words that really tell people what it is we do. And that's why we say we help small businesses market and manage on the web and beyond. Okay? So now we know that it's a brand-enabled business name. When the business name doesn't do all of the work, then we need a tagline in order to be able to enable our branding. So helping small businesses market and manage on the web and beyond. Now we know what W3 Consulting is all about. Next up is the domain, right? So you choose a domain, And the domain can be keyword oriented. It doesn't really matter if it has keywords, but it's beneficial if it does. Okay, so if your company, the domain you decide on is basically your company's initials, and that's the domain you want, that's fine. It's not the end of the world. But if you decide, so this happens many times with law firms, right? It's abclawfirm.com because they took the first initials, of the partners of the firm, and then that becomes abclawfirm.com or abclaw.com. Fine. That's going to do just fine for you and whatnot. But better would be, if there are family attorneys, family lawyers, RoanokeVirginia.com. Maybe that's too long, so then you have to shorten it. Okay, well, let's try RoanokeFamilyLaw.com. Well, great. Now Google looks at that and they say Roanoke. Okay, that's in Virginia. Family law. Oh, that's their family attorney. So they do divorce and other kinds of domestic, disputes. That's what that website's about. And now when you create the website around it and everything else, now it's starting to bundle together the pieces and the components. So yes, abclaw.com is going to be just fine, but RoanokeFamilyLaw.com is going to be better. Okay, if you'll see that I wrote here and branded short URL. For some companies, if you have a really long domain name, you might actually want to utilize what's called a branded short URL. This uses Bitly is the most popular platform because they allow you to do it for free, which is to create a short URL, basically a URL that's something very short, usually 3 to 5 letters, and with a short what we call top-level domain. So .com is the most popular TLD or top-level domain, but there's .ly. In the case of Bitly, they use it bit.ly, which happens to be the country code TLD for Libya. So clearly Bitly's not in Libya, but they just use it because it makes for a fun way to write out their name in their domain address. And so you can do the same thing. You can see that Facebook uses that with the shares branded short URL, and so they have shar.es. .es is for Spain, for España, and so that's the country code for Spain. And so you can actually spell words using the .com, basically the .net, .org part of it, using these various available country code or top-level domains. So you can create one of those for your own company, and many times those are very useful for being able to send a shorter link as opposed to having a really 155 character long URL. You can create a stronger and better web presence by using those shorter domains because it's branded by your company, and so therefore people are going to see your URL instead of some other services. And Bitly, like I said, once you create or register one of these short URLs, the branded ones, you can actually use Bitly for free to do that. So Bitly's doing all the work, but instead of someone seeing bit.ly and a bunch of random characters, they're seeing your brand in front. Next up is our logos and avatars. Okay, so on the web, the way in which people see your brand most often is through the logo or avatar. So a logo is basically your logo icon and the words attached to it. So in that case, it's the image that people see with the name of the company typically below it or to the side of it. And avatars are basically the headshots that you typically see on social media profiles. So if you're on Twitter, there's usually an image of the person's Twitter profile. In their Twitter profile, that image can be usually an individual with your logo maybe in the corner. As in my case, for W3 Consulting, when you go to @W3 Consulting, you see my headshot and then you see my logo in the corner. So you know that there's a person associated with W3 Consulting, and it's typically me manning the Twitter profile. I'm doing most of my own tweeting. And we have other automated tools and other people on staff who are putting out tweets on occasion, but I pretty much handle my own Twitter. But I don't handle Facebook, for instance. And so that's just the traditional W3 Consulting logo, and that's all I want it to be. So you have to make those decisions in terms of where are you active and how do you want to represent yourself across those various connection points. You need to decide on what those logos will look like, what those avatars will look like, okay, and whether or not it's your face or the logo of the company that acts as the avatar. Next up is website, blog, and email software, marketing software, and those are just decisions you need to decide on. For websites, I traditionally recommend WordPress first, and then probably a follow-up to that to be Squarespace. And then if you're doing some kind of e-commerce, and it's e-commerce only, maybe be WordPress with WooCommerce, or Squarespace using one of their, online catalog functions, or Shopify, or something else, right? So you have different options. Blogging, again, I defer back to the WordPress platform, just because it's probably the best for most small businesses. And then in terms of email marketing software, you can choose among many of the big players. You have Constant Contact and MailChimp, and GetResponse, and you have I said MailChimp, and you have MailerLite, MailerLite is a great software as well. And they have varying plans and that kind of thing. But you pretty much need those critical pieces. And then you have all of your social media profiles, okay? And so what I can say about that here is it's really important to have as few social media profiles as possible, but in the same sense, almost it sounds hypocritical and counterintuitive, but you have to have a social account on all of the social media platforms that are in the industry. So what do I mean by that? If you are going to engage online, you need to choose one, if not a few social platforms. That is, if you're going to be on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, and so on and so forth, you've got to really choose one, maybe top 3 of those that you can truly be fully engaged in the culture and putting the appropriate amount of engagement and content there so that you can actually make success and get some revenue out of, engaging on that platform, putting content on that platform. If you try to do every social media platform, you're going to just spin your wheels. You're going to be a jack of trades and an ace of none. You need to really be good at one platform before you go ahead and branch out to others. And that means really working on your web presence to drive traffic from those social media platforms to your website or to your blog or to email signups so that you can make sales, okay? So that's what I mean by having as few as possible that you engage on. However, in parentheses there I have social brand protection. What does that mean? Well, on the internet, just generally, you can register any username that you want, any handle as we call it, on any social media profile. So if someone wanted to go out there and register W3 Consulting, on Twitter, the only thing that's stopping them is the fact that I already own it. I already registered it. I'm using it, okay? Well, that's not very good protection for you as a business owner when you want to make sure that those web presence assets are being protected. So you need to go out to all of your social media platforms, at least the major ones, and register them all so that you have control over them. Do you have to ever use them? Nope. But you want to own them, quote unquote, so that no one else can use them. Okay, that's social brand protection. It's basically going out there so that, if you have a daycare, you don't have someone going out there and publishing information trying to get little children to follow them or parents to follow them and do something erroneous or illegal even with regard to your brand, because then that's only going to hurt you, even if it's completely fake, even if it's completely false. It's still going to hurt your brand if somebody else is purporting to be you, and then you have to hire attorneys and get law enforcement involved and all those kinds of things. In the most egregious cases, you don't want to have to do that. So the easy part: spend the time, register the usernames for your company, and take them. And then say that right now, not everybody is on, some social media platform. Say ELO, the little open source social network out there, ELLO. ELO is small. No one really is talking about it anymore after it had its initial sort of 5 minutes of fame. But maybe in 2 or 3 years it gets super popular. Well, once it gets super popular, guess what? Lots of people join, lots of people take usernames, and then you're out getting the right social media username or handle that you want. But if you register it now, you have it, and then if it becomes popular, great, you can start engaging and you have the appropriate web presence because you have the right name. Okay? That's what social brand protection is all about. So next up is just a couple of ideal practices, and then I want to show you some samples of ones and walk you through them. Okay, so very quickly, consistency, and I think I've been saying this the entire time, right? Consistency is so important. If you choose a logo, you choose an avatar, you choose a particular tone and style that you're going to be speaking online with, stick to it, okay? The color palette, you don't have a website with 5 colors that you've chosen with your graphic design team and your brand strategist, and then go to your Twitter profile and then put completely different colors, right? That makes no sense. But you know how often I see that happen? All the time. Okay, and it's just a fact of life. You go onto Twitter, you probably see other people's profiles, and you think, oh, well, I might put this color, and I might use this default background that Twitter has, and oh, that's a cute, picture. Maybe I'll just put that up. But it has nothing to do with the consistency of the brand. Yeah, sure, that picture might be interesting and cute and whatever. But if it's not consistent with the brand, you're off message, you're not being consistent, and that makes for a poor web presence. Consistency is key. So less is more, okay, in that sense. It should be decided up front what everywhere where you have control over a font or a typeface, those are the typefaces or the fonts that you use. Everywhere you have options for colors, these are the colors that you use. Wherever there's a logo or an avatar that's necessary, these are the logos or avatars that you use, period. There's no deviation because you don't need to anymore. And quite honestly, that creates efficiency in the sense that you no longer have to think about it. You can just go ahead and do that for your business and go on. Okay, next up, find your content and voice. I've already said that, but it's just worth reiterating. And finally, web presence is all an iterative process. You want to make sure that as you improve your products or services, that you're improving your web presence. Okay, that means that you're going out there and saying, okay, how can we be more consistent? How can we put out more value? How can we make sure that our voice is being heard and being understood the way in which we want it to be? Okay, because you don't have control over your entire web presence, right? Because someone else can talk about you. But when you're able to talk about yourself, do it in a manner that's consistent with the brand. And that allows you to keep improving upon it till you get the right language and the right pieces in place to make it as consistent as possible. Okay, so with that, I want to hop out of the presentation. I'm just going to walk you through a few of the Virginia small businesses that I've come across online that I think would be really helpful for you to see what they're doing and what they're doing well, and maybe places and room for improvement. So the first one that I've got up here is, I'm going to try and put this into full screen mode. Here we go. So this is Mudhouse Coffee Roasters. I don't know this business at all. I just came across them in my research, and the Mudhouse Coffee Roasters have this online shop. They have where you can buy coffee, and they have I believe they have a retail location as well. But they basically have this e-commerce site, and they're doing some really good things well. One is the site is really simple, right? They started off with beautiful coffees, thoughtfully sourced and carefully roasted for you. I know exactly what that means, okay? And I can shop for the coffee. Basically, I can subscribe to coffee that gets delivered to me, and they have the blog, front and center, okay? Now, the blog isn't being updated as often as I would like it to, but they're actually putting out quite a bit of good content. Okay, so they're putting out information. They were named the Roaster of the Year for 2017, which is fantastic, from the Sustainable Harvest Coffee Foundation conference. This is really fantastic. Or I guess it's Roast Magazine that named them Roaster of the Year. So that's something that's notable. It should be talked about on the blog. Okay, it's there to inform people about a success that they had. Fantastic. This should show up in their email newsletter as well, and so on and so forth. Then they have Finca La Cabra, and that's going to come back again in the future, so keep note of that, Finca La Cabra. And so we have their new coffee farm in Panama, and they have other posts, and basically they're doing it right. They're putting out new and interesting information that people would be interested in. And as you can see here, they have these categories on here, which is announcements, tips and recipes. They have something called the Pure Brilliance campaign, events, media coverage, and then a travel log, how they're traveling around and maybe tasting and testing new coffees and so on and so forth. Okay, so they've chosen a set of categories. They're speaking inside of those categories, and they're not going off message. Okay, so it's very, very simple brand concept. Okay, so let's jump down to the bottom of the page, and let's see if I can jump down to the bottom of the page here quickly. And we can see that they're active on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And again, they're doing things really well on each of those. So if we, again, they have an email newsletter. See, they did it right there. So they've got an email newsletter. And look, they even went so far as to call it getting blacklisted, right? So typically something that's a pejorative they've used as a fun way to say, you know, black gold coffee, that kind of thing. They're using that as a fun way to play on words to get people to sign up for their email newsletter. Okay, so they sign up for a newsletter, they immediately make a statement that you get exclusive invitations to try limited edition roasts. So that means that if I sign up for them, I'm getting something special. Great, I'll sign up and get something special. Okay, so let's go out to Facebook and to Twitter and Instagram, just very quickly. Okay. So first up is Facebook, and since I'm not logged into Facebook, it's probably not going to give me as much as I should be able to. But you can see here that Facebook is going to put this big screen thing in front of it without me being logged in, so I apologize. But we look at this first image, and we can see here they've used their logo, great, and this is a color version of their logo, which is different than the white version of their logo on their website, but I immediately recognized that these were the same, so they've made that choice, that they're going to use their color logo here. It matches, and of course, same name, and even their vanity URL is facebook.com/pages/Mudhouse Coffee Roasters. Consistent username, okay? Now we have this picture of this image, and I have no idea what it is, but if I click on it, I'm intrigued, and I see that, oh, look, it's Finca La Cabra. What is that? Well, I was on their blog, and I noticed that their blog said that that's their new coffee farm in Panama, okay? So while it's not ideal that this doesn't actually have a logo that shows something, or maybe even a caption that tells us that it is what it is, there is at least a connection between why that image is there in the header. Again, I would like it to actually say something that tells me what it is. But then they're regularly posting. They have photos, and they have really interesting videos, and they're telling people about new brews that they have coming up at their location, and they're just all kinds of really interesting posts that they're putting up there. They're cross-promoting other companies and doing some really interesting things here. Okay, so they're doing enough. They could be posting again more often, but you know, nobody's perfect. All right. Next up is their Twitter profile. Again, consistent icon. We have their name. They've spelled out their name. Notice that Twitter didn't allow them to add Mudhouse Coffee Roasters as their Twitter profile name, so they just have Mudhouse Coffee. But that's enough for me to be able to recognize that. They're based in Charlottesville, Virginia, so if you're in Charlottesville, go check them out. Again, I'm not getting paid to tell you this, but that's fine. But notice that they have, they tell you in their description here to subscribe to Beans and Merch Online, so then again, they're pushing you to go ahead to go to their website and to figure out how to subscribe to their coffee and also to buy merchandise on their website. Okay, so again, it's all about making sure that you're staying consistent here. All right, next up, their Instagram profile. Their Instagram profile match up quite closely to their, you know, their message, right? So they have they're a fun brand. It's very casual. They're a coffee roaster company, so they're talking about all of those kinds of things. And so again, they have pictures and videos of coffee stuff. They have interesting things. They're showing their retail location and somebody painting in front of it. You know, they're showing somebody, you know, pouring a brew and a pour over. I think that's what it's called. Showing coffee, like really interesting stuff that's being posted. And then if you click on them, you'll see the content of the text-based content. But that's really interesting. Okay, again, they were able to use Mudhouse Coffee Roasters as their name, consistency, and then they use their full name here. Again, all good stuff, right? So if I do a search online, I'm going to find them. Okay, and I'm going to be able to find their Instagram profile. If I just type in Mudhouse Coffee Roasters Instagram, I bet you I'm going to be able to find them in a heartbeat. Google is going to find them, and I'm going to be able to see who they are. Okay. Next up is, and I just got a couple minutes left, so I'm gonna have to breeze through this pretty quickly. But you can see here they've done Facebook. This is Yelp, Instagram, and they have a Google Plus page. And what's really cool is they've put and used Yelp to great effect to get more reviews up here. Again, they've consistently used their logo throughout Facebook, Instagram, and Google+. They've even added their logo into their Yelp profile as one of the images. So if you weren't really sure if that yoga studio was, you know, that Alexandria Yoga Studio was related to them, you'll be able to tell because their website and their Yelp profile both have the same logos. Okay, so really, really good stuff there. So I apologize I can't give more attention to that. Saxon Shoes, they're a Richmond-based, I think, a Richmond-based one, and they're doing good stuff. So I check out their social media stuff because they are pumping out lots and lots of content. They're doing really great stuff on Instagram and posting regularly on Facebook, and they actually have a very useful YouTube channel where they're publishing content on YouTube and doing a really great job with putting out really diverse content because, talking about shoes traditionally is, all about fashion and those kinds of things, but they're really trying to diversify and doing some other interesting things. They have a dance-a-thon that they do and other kinds of really creative and innovative, ways of getting out there into the market. So those are just a couple of brands to check out. And like I said, you can see, things where they're not doing things great and things where they are doing things great, but it's working for them. Okay, so it's really important for you to recognize that about your own brand and just doing the things that work, in the time that you have. So I know now is we have just very limited time for Q&A, but I do want to make sure we have some time for Q&A. So Tracy, if there are any questions, burning questions, I'm happy to answer them, and then we can close out.
Great. We can start with how to distinguish your Facebook page from others. That's a big one.
Sure, and that's a real problem because Facebook is a structured environment, right? So the reason Facebook won and MySpace failed, well, we can say that of the two platforms, is because MySpace you could make your page look, completely like you wanted it to, and Facebook you can't. The ways in which you can make your Facebook unique are three ways. One is through the big hero image or your Facebook header image, that primary image that stands at the top of your Facebook page. That shows up both in the mobile application, on your desktop, the desktop Facebook platform, and everywhere else Facebook is shown. So Facebook, and I'll just put this up front, Facebook does not allow you to put words in that header image, but I know a lot of people who do, I'm just saying. And so you are capable of putting cues for people in that header image, okay? So, if you have your logo as your avatar for the company, that's going to obviously be unique. And then, of course, it's content. It's what content are you putting out there in order to be able to get people to understand the value that your company or product or service provides. And then the final part is you engaging with other Facebook pages. This is what really stands a good Facebook page apart from others. It's responding to people on Facebook when they do comment and engage, but also going out there as the Facebook page and commenting on other Facebook pages to get your brand in front of other audiences that you might not otherwise be able to get in front of through alliances. So, for example, Refresh Yoga Center, they may post as Refresh Yoga Center on maybe a massage therapist's website. They do massage. So say a Pilates studio. Okay, maybe they don't do Pilates. They go to a Pilates studio and they engage on the Pilates studio or on a local gym's Facebook page. Now you're spreading your name and content to a larger environment by being able to do that. Again, be appropriate. Don't be spammy, but you can get yourself out there, and that's what really differentiates you by being, spreading your content across and engaging with a larger audience across multiple Facebook pages.
Great, thanks, Ray. Regarding taglines, should it be a description of the business or what type of business the company does, i.e. tagline IT consulting company or a project management company?
Sure. So the reality is that you're usually limited to about 8 words, but what I would do is I would look at the big companies. There are lists of taglines for companies, and you start to see some really interesting things. Tagline is kind of like writing haiku, right? You have this art and science that you have to blend together in order to be able to create a good tagline. I don't have time today to do this, but if you want to email me, I'm happy to discuss with you what you're trying to achieve, and we can potentially, sort of bounce ideas around. But the idea is to create something that tells what your business does if your business name does not. Okay, so if you're XYZ Global Consulting, what does that mean? Okay, well, start with verb, and then lead into your audience, and then lead into a benefit. So that's typically the way in which you create a tagline. So, like I said, W3 Consulting. What does W3 Consulting do if you don't know what W3 means or stands for? Well, we help small businesses market and manage on the web and beyond. Bingo. I've now solved the problem of my business name.
Great. How important are quality photographs? Should I hire a professional?
If you're able to hire a professional, yes. If you're not able to hire a professional, you probably have a phone with a competent camera in order to be able to do it. I would check out some online resources in terms of how to take good photographs, learn what the rule of threes is in photography. If you don't know what the rule of threes is, Google it and you'll find out. But some basic understanding of how to take photographs is really important. Lighting is important, making sure that you're not stretching images and making them blurry for people, making sure they're high enough pixel density so that it can be enlarged or shrunk so that it's the right format and that kind of thing. A little bit of education online can get you really far to doing your own photographs, but for, say, your primary pages on your website and your primary avatar, like a headshot or logo, those kinds of things, those should probably be professionally developed.
Great. One last question, and then we'll close out. Can you talk about appropriate email signature styles?
Sure. So email signatures are a topic that I could spend an entire webinar on. And so just very, very briefly, email signatures should be as short as possible, but no shorter than are necessary for people to have the information necessary to get back in touch with you when you initiate an email or respond to an email, okay? And so, one is substance. How do people get in contact with you? And that's the real purpose of an email signature, is to have the contact information, okay? So if most of your contacts are with Skype, you should probably have your Skype ID in your email signature. But if nobody contacts you via Skype, well, why would you have that in your email signature, right? So that's a little common sense. But the other side is that you can promote services and other things in your email signature, which can be really powerful. So if you have an ongoing campaign, you just have one line below your email signature that promotes it with a link to it, and that can be very, very powerful. No images, even for those of you who have fancy software that add images in web standard specific ways or web compliant ways, emails with images will basically clog up the works. There are lots of email software out there that block emails with those images that are embedded the way they are, and many times they end up attaching, especially if you're an Outlook user, you receive emails, many of those show up as attachments to the email and can be very, very frustrating for users who think that there's a document attached, but it's really just your logo, okay? So no images. I know that it's sometimes people feel like it's something they want to do, but I have a fairly strong stance on no images in email signatures. That doesn't mean you can't add images into the body of the email, but email signatures, no. And use styling. Use bold, italics, underline to effectively identify the most important parts of the email signature. But if you have other questions, feel free to email me and we can talk about that offline.
Great. Well, that was it. Thank you, Ray, or thank you all for participating today. And I actually have a kudos to Ray in the question, so I'm going to read that out. Super presentation. I've watched a lot of web management related things, but this is one of the best. Succinct, insightful, interesting, time well spent, 3 tiers to Ray and the Virginia SBDC. So thank you, Anne, for those kudos, and thank you all for participating today. Today's webinar was recorded, and it'll be posted on the Virginia SBDC website under live webinars and recordings. Tomorrow you'll be receiving a follow-up email on the webinar, and there'll be an evaluation link in that. Please help us to continue to improve our training by taking the time to complete the evaluation. If you want to complete the evaluation now, I did put that in the chat window. Our next webinar is April 6th on how to create a content calendar. Don't forget to join the conversation on SBDC Day by using the hashtag SBDC Day and or Virginia SBDC. Thank you all for participating today.